what moves does Texas, or where does Texas need to improve to win a Natty? Gerald, I'll let you start out. Where do you think we need to improve? Where the major focuses need to be in this spring?
Yeah, I think the biggest areas for me, one is probably tight end. I think Texas doesn't have a clear answer there, and that's such a key part of what Sark likes to do offensively, is have a tight end that can catch the ball, that can get out there, create mismatches, and do that. And just Texas, you had Gunnar Helm, who was a key piece of the offense this year, one of the top receivers, kind of an outlet for Quinn Ewers on a lot of spots. So I think that's something that I'm keeping an eye on for sure, is that tight end position. And then honestly, along that same line, the interior of the offensive line, I think, is another spot where Texas really does need to get better. Devin Campbell, love him. Devon Campbell, love him. Great prospect. But there were times where he was just not very good. He got pulled in multiple spots this last year. Who's going to be on the other side of him? Who knows, right? They're still trying to figure that out, I think, a little bit based on where the center play goes and all that. But the interior offensive line is going to have a lot to say, I think, about the success of the running game. And the success of the running game has a lot to say about how the success of the offense, especially when you've got a young quarterback. You've got Arch Manning going to be in his first year as a starter, stepping into hostile confines week one. The best friend of a young quarterback starting is a solid offensive line and a solid ground game. And so I think those two things specifically for Texas to get to its goals next year, which honestly the road to those goals start week one in Ohio, right? Tight end, interior offensive line are the two biggest glaring things to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think Texas realized that, and they tried to go out and get, I thought was the best guy in the portal tight end the position, Max Clare from Purdue. Unfortunately, we'll be playing him week one because he did go to Ohio State. He's a really good player, so it sucks to see him go there. I would agree with that. I think Devon Campbell has yet to live up to the potential that, I mean, again, I think he's the highest rated offensive line recruit in like the past decade, which is crazy.
Something like that,
yeah, he hasn't lived up to those expectations. Like he's been good. If he would have went to the NFL this year, he probably would have been like a 4th or 5th round draft pick. But to me, when you're at that position, you have to be a 1st round draft pick. So it's going to be very interesting if he can get there. And it's funny, you went personnel wise, I went more statistics. So running game wise, I looked at like the last 10, but they correlate. And like you talked about the interior of the offensive line, that correlates to the running game. So our running game, I looked up yards per attempt of the last 10 national championships and where they ranked. Ohio State was 25th. Michigan was 42nd. UGA was 3rd, then 19th. Bama was 29th. Then LSU was 21st. Clemson was 2nd. Bama was 10th. Clemson, this is the worst one, guys, 76th. That tells you how good Deshaun Watson was, because I'll bring out some red zone statistics too, because that's something we need to concentrate. And then Bama, 47th in the country. So you're basically top 50. Last year, guys, Texas was 64th. They have to get better in the run game department. I talked about that. I made a video about that. I think at the time of the video, halfway through the season, I was talking 4.3 yards per carry. And I said, if this stays, this is not good enough to win a national championship. I believe it stayed about there or even went down a slight tick. So that has to get better going forward. I will say this, though. It seems to be an outlier because in 23, we were 18th in the country in yards per carry. 22, we were 16th. And 21, we're 11th. If we're in the top 20, we're good, guys. So I really do think that can correlate to CJ Baxter getting hurt. I think if he's healthy, Texas will be better running the football. I'm cautiously optimistic when saying that. Also, same thing with Arch. I think Arch will help us in the running game as well. So we'll have to see. But that I completely agree. Like when we look at statistics and then we look at personnel, they correlate, and they got to get better on the interior, and they got to get better in the numbers when they do get better, hopefully on the interior.
And I think that running game also correlates to the other area that statistically jumps out to me is red zone scoring, red zone touchdowns specifically, right? Texas was unable to push the ball over the line, right? And that, like, we can draw a straight line from Texas's inability to get 3 yards to the loss in the college football playoff, right? If Texas doesn't have to go to that weird rollout situation, doesn't have to do the toss, Quinn Ewers isn't back there rolling back and get strip sacked, right? That, to me, there's a direct line, one-to-one relationship between Texas not being able to run the ball and Texas's red zone woes, right? The best teams in the world, you think about the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, right? Now the tush push is a controversial thing, right? Whatever, right? But they can run the ball. They can get the 1 yard when they need it. They have a go-to play. They have a go-to package. They have a go-to set. Texas doesn't have that. When they need 1 yard, they can't get it. That should be your running back. That should be a Jarrett Gibson. That should be you have your defensive tackles in there at wing back and at fullback, and you just push the line 1 yard. So I'm with you there. I think that running game, the inability to get 1 yard when you need it, running game, red zone scoring. I think we're in one accord there, Matthew.
No, I completely agree. So let's talk about the red zone scoring. Ohio State, 32nd in the country last year. Michigan, 29th. UGA, first. And that's funny because if you look at the running game, the same year, UGA was third, what we just talked about. So if you have a really strong running game, you're going to be very good in the red zone. All these things correlate pretty well. Again, the worst red zone offense in this list was Clemson in 2016, and they had a bad running game. So all these things correlate. If you go down the list, they're all very similar in red zone scoring and running game production, which makes complete sense because guys down in the red zone, spaces are tight. It's very hard to execute passing games down in the red zone, especially what Sark likes to run. Sark usually likes to run like longer developing routes and RPO style of offense. That does not work at all in the red zone. And I completely agree with you. When I watch the Philadelphia Eagles and I watch the Buffalo Bills, if they do not have a package like they do for those guys with Arch Manning, I will be highly, highly disappointed. Because as I said a couple weeks ago, I think Arch Manning is the comp for me is a young Josh Allen. I'm not saying he's this Josh Allen, which just got a record-breaking contract in the NFL. I'm saying young Josh Allen. And young Josh Allen was he improvised very well, and he was able to run the football very well. I'm hoping we can get that with Arch, and I'm hoping that will solve a lot of these issues that we do have.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think having a quarterback that's a zone read threat in the red zone is a big deal, right? Texas made a mint with both Colt McCoy and Vince Young at the national champion level teams because they could run the zone read because the quarterback was a number in the defensive alignment for the run game, especially in the red zone. Like there's nothing better than a quarterback reading the end on the goal line and being able to pull it or push it and get across the line. So now I'm with you there. I think there's Arch should add to that. And again, but Sark still is not. He's not a quarterback run kind of guy. That's not his MO. That's not his preferred way to use his quarterbacks because the quarterback is so integral to it, and that's a way to open the quarterback up to unnecessary hits. So I don't think Arch is going to be like a battering ram down there like you see Cam Newton, that national championship team, right? You're not going to see that, but I think you will see some options for Arch, some additional things, maybe even like a jump pass. I want the Tebow jump pass in there. Threaten with the legs, dump it over the top. I'd love to see it. I'm with you there.
No, yeah, I think you just have to have that threat. Like, I don't expect Arch to have like 15 rushing touchdowns or something crazy like that, but can he give me 5? I think 5 is enough to keep people honest. And I think that's something we need to incorporate in the offense because, again, red zone under Sark has gotten worse every year. It's gone from 6th in 2021, 13th in 2022. 2023, we were 89th, and then last year we were 111th in the country. And like I said, the worst red zone scoring team that has won a national championship in the past 10 years is Clemson in 2016. And we know how good Deshaun Watson was. So if you're going to be, I guess if Arch Manning is going to be Deshaun Watson, we can do that, but that's a lot to ask for a quarterback. I'd rather not ask that of him.
You mean you don't want to be one of the best college football quarterbacks in the last 15 years?
Yeah. I was going to say.
I'd love to see it, right? But I don't think it's going to happen. And you called that red zone stat out. Who graduated between those 2 years where Texas went from 13th to 18th? Bijan Robinson, Roshan Johnson covered a lot of sins. Like, I think it's been an issue for a lot longer than we know, but you had 2 guys that could get it done solo dolo there. So I think there's probably a tale that you can tell there.
Yeah, 100%. We went from having 2 really, or 1 like legendary type running back who's really good in the NFL, arguably the best running back in the NFL. I think he's top 3. And then you had a guy that was like a 4th or 5th round pick, or a 3rd or 4th round pick in Roshan Johnson. And then Jonathan Brooks, I think, did a pretty good job, but then he got hurt. So I think that I should dive into that of what was the difference with Jonathan Brooks and without Jonathan Brooks. I bet we were probably in the 50s or 60s with him. We still weren't great. And then it fell off a cliff once he got hurt. And then last year, no offense, we really just didn't have a guy. Like, Jaden Blue's probably going to be like a 6th round pick. Trey Weissner, when he does go to the NFL, will probably be the same, about a 6th, 7th round pick. CJ Baxter brings us to that next upside where I think he could be somewhere in between Jonathan Brooks or Bijan Robinson. I don't think he's as good as Bijan, but I think he can be as good as Jonathan Brooks was.
For sure. And again, that is Jonathan Brooks was a guy who would have won the Doak Walker if he hadn't gotten hurt, right? It's like that's a pretty solid level to aspire to.
No, 100%. So we both agree. I think running game, red zone, two biggest things. I don't think there's anything in the top two that approaches that. What is there anything else you can think of that could hold this team back?
Special teams is something else that just always is in the back of my mind, right? And not in like, again, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't need you to win all the special teams awards. I don't need you to return a bunch of kicks and block a bunch of punts. I just need you not to suck. Like, don't be a liability on the field. I don't want to have to worry about a field goal. I don't have to worry about a punt or a punt coverage team. Like, I want to be able to just say, okay, we're off the field, whatever. Every drive ends in a kick that's successful, and I'm fine with it.
No, 100%. You can't be disastrous with special teams. Last year was bordering on that. I wouldn't go all the way that far, but it was pretty close. Like I said, a couple Silas Bolden miscues and maybe another bad punt or two, and we could have been talking about like one of the worst special teams units in the country.
Go look at the S&P Plus numbers. Go look at it is floated by a couple of big plays from Silas Bolden. It is not good.
100%. We definitely got to get better there.